Hello, this is the summary of my 5th week of dev streams, and before we'll talk about the usual things, I need to do some remarks first. If you've noticed, this is technically the 6th week, not 5th, but I've taken a break because I needed to rethink some things and I wasn't really sure what I was doing with this series. So these summaries from now on will be slightly different. They will be more like summaries, and I'll do less explanations, actually. Because the farther we go, the less things I'll actually have to talk about. I mean, this series wasn't really supposed to be an educational one. It kind of doesn't fit to have explanations and devlogs and whatever. I'm not here to really teach, especially that I'm still sort of a beginner. And so if I ever wanted to do some teaching videos, I'll simply do teaching videos about some topic. If you'd still like to have those explanations of things in these summaries, then write that in the comment, but I'll still want to limit things in general. Because another reason for that is also that these summaries and streams take a lot of time for me. And the thing is, that isn't the only thing I would like to do in my week. I need to find some time for private stuff. And while I'm getting better at doing things faster with the editing, it still takes way too much time and effort. So I'll strip those summaries down to basically bare bones information of what I was doing every day, especially that soon there won't be much to actually talk about in terms of explaining things. So apologies if it looks kind of strange and that I'm surrendering to laziness, but yeah, this is a slight problem and I would like to actually do some more stuff. So, a quick reminder, link to my Twitch channel is in the description. I stream every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 15 of Central European Time, as well as on Saturdays later at 19 or 20. Any exceptions to that, and there are a lot of exceptions, are informed on my Discord server, which is also in description. So let's get to it. Alright, before I summarize Monday, I need to revoke one thing about me getting more efficient in recording and editing. Because I'm recording this on goddamn Sunday, and already half the day has passed because of private reasons. And so I need to kind of speedrun the entire thing if I want to actually publish this at least the next day. There isn't a lot to talk about. Only Wednesday has a bit more detail. So I think there's no reason to talk about each day individually. And so I'll cram all these days into one chapter, and so apologies for the situation. So the last week all I was doing was learning how the widget system works, and it turned out that you don't need to do anything in terms of changing it. I only need to add features. And so on Monday, all I was really doing was adding a specific icon provider that will change its icon if the provider object is targeted by some query. Also, query, by the way, I've updated the query to have a constantly running variant instead of just one query for specific searching of things. And so now exist two queries. One is just a static class with a method for that, and the constant one is an ordinary class, which you simply store in your sensor object, and all the difference lies simply in usage as well as allocation type, and that's really it. Also, I fixed some cone calculation logic to have it uniform everywhere in the project, not to vary between various systems. Now, on Wednesday, there was enough things happening that we'll actually talk about it in detail. Because on Wednesday, I was implementing the audio system, specifically integrating Fmod into the project and then making use of it. This second thing in practice looked like basically just prolonged copy pasting of a system I already had prepared way earlier. because I began to work on one like way before these dev streams even began. It was like, I guess, April of this year. And it took me a hell lot of time to figure out why it didn't work exactly as I wanted it to work. And just recently, I finally found out, with the help of some hints from the Fmod team on the Fmod forums. And it turned out that I couldn't use my system for months simply because I screwed up with threading and cleanup loops, which were extremely easy to fix. Nonetheless, the system works, at least in principle. There's still something wrong happening when you trigger sounds too fast, but that's more of a bug to fix, not a gigantic architecture failure or whatever. So let's delve into how do you actually set up Fmod and how my system works for this. So to install Fmod in your Unity project, you simply need to import an Fmod package for a given version. Despite a new version being out, I used the one I had Fmod Studio installed for, which is 2.3.8. And when you import the package, it's important to select everything in the import prompt. You get this funny wizard window. It's basically a really handle, quick setup menu that allows you to fix a lot of things immediately, like updating all the listeners in your project from Unity's listeners to Fmod listeners, as well as some other settings, including the build. When you import Fmod, you have three options basically. You have two options to create a new build in the new project, or you can use an already created build, which you can create in the Fmod Studio app. In my case, I've done the latter. I have some organization in the files of the repo. And that's really it for setting up Fmod in Unity, at least in terms of just having it. The next thing worthy of setting up is to set up the Fmod project overall. That is, creating your folder structure for the assets, for the events, create all the groups, create all the buses, create all the banks you need, or just the ones that you'll be using in the near future. You can always add stuff later. And when you're done doing that, you simply build the project, and Unity has references to everything you've just implemented. As for the actual audio system, the core architecture looks like this. We have two sides to this. We have the execution and we have the administration, as in almost every system, but in this case, it's just worth dividing out. For the execution side, which is the playback of actually technically playing the sounds and controlling things in general, you have emitter mono behaviors. In fact, you don't stick these mono behaviors anywhere, you just have a prefab with this script and you instantiate it whenever you need it. The emitter simply emits audio and signals the system to clean up things when it's done. Now, emitters are not simply instantiated and forgot about. As the widgets in the World UI system I implemented earlier, the emitters need to be pulled for performance. So the other two main files for the system are the pool and a pool manager. The pool simply is a pool of emitters, and that's it. Well, the pool manager handles the creation of pools per given audio event. An audio event, in our case, is not an event from Fmod, but instead a scriptable object that handles the reference to a given Fmod event, like the pool size for this event, the information whether it's looping, whether it's 3D, whether it has some default parameters that you can set up and reset, and whether it changes to another event. So it's basically a typical data scriptable object. That's it. Now, for the administrative side, you have the audio manager, which is basically a playback manager. Using it, you can call the system to prepare the playback for a specific sound you want, and you can tell whether you want it to be spatial or not. And if it's spatial, then you can tell if it simply needs to be created at some point, or whether the emitter needs to follow something. You can also specify if the event you're playing will be tracked or not. If it's not tracked, then you just fire and forget. If it is tracked, then the usage changes a bit. Instead of just calling a method and you're done, because the untracked methods have the void return type, the tracked method return a handle, which you can use to later manually pause the sound or change its parameters dynamically via your code or whatever. You know, it's just a handle for the emitter. The audio manager also has methods for stopping everything if you wish. For example, when you have a cutscene and you want to just make everything shut up. The second most important administrative thing is the mixer manager, which on the other hand handles the buses, the volumes, the muting, the snapshots, and everything that is, you know, parameterization and not related to directly playing a sound. And so that's it for the system. I wish I could explain it more clearly, but as I mentioned, I don't have much time for this, so apologies. Finally, on Friday, I decided to begin working on a quite crucial element of any game like the one I'm working on. It is enemies. Now, my idea for the Friday stream was to mainly work on the design and how to fit the enemies in the project, but it turned out that I designed all I need in like 10 minutes. And so I had the remaining 90% of the stream for doing more technical things. And that was unfortunate because my brain couldn't quite move from design mode to technical mode. And so all I did that day was to sluggishly adapting the existing state machine mechanism for enemies and building the framework for them. And in terms of actual implementations, I got stuck on how to implement pathfinding, especially pathfinding that would work with my zone system. Because I was basically useless for technical things that day, I just gave up and left some notes on which I could continue doing stuff. So that was the entire Friday stream in a nutshell. Alright, any reflections recorded this time on Monday? No. Or actually, well, I'll mention that making the audio system finally reinvigorated me to work on this project because earlier I had thoughts about it, like say shitty code demo, and that was it. And now actually I can work on stuff. I'll make these enemies work in the next week. Then basically there will be no need to work on any systems anymore. Like minor mechanics, all the details could be worked on. And yeah, this project is going somewhere. Alright, I have 2 hours before stream, so see you next time.